Just gonna set up the recording. Hello. Are you at school?
Yeah, I'm sitting in ISC. Yeah, so I was getting some work done and then
Yep.
I joined you.
Um, well, let's give it maybe a minute or two to see if other folks show up, and then if they don't, we will just dive in and see if you have
Okay,
questions.
all right. How's your day going so far?
Good. Busy. How about you?
Mine is busy too, but tomorrow's Friday and I don't have classes, so
Oh, that's nice.
I'm gonna get a little break. Yeah.
Yes, that's good. That's a good setup.
Yeah, I think like my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays are super busy, and then Friday gets a little slow, and then Thursday's a little slow, and then Friday I have no classes, so it's like,
Long weekend.
yeah,
Do
it's
you
a good
do
difference.
you do you work as well?
Yeah, so I am an RA at the housing office, and then I do FDA. I'm also the president of Pakistani Student Association,
Okay.
and like all those things will just add up.
Yeah. Takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
It's
a
good.
lot of meetings. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know if other folks will show up, so it might just be you and me until you run out of questions, and then you're welcome to stay on, and I'm just going to go through the slides, or you can see it on the recording, up to you. But why don't we start with what questions do you have?
Uh,
And if you don't have any,
can
I
we
can
can we go over the Porter's five forces? Is it four forces or five forces?
five forces. Yes. So, all
Five
right.
forces. Yes. And then like what kind of examples
Sure. Let me
should I use?
bring up this my little deck here. All right. So I will skip over to page 5. So we covered Porter's five. Here's you're seeing my screen, I assume.
Yeah, I'm seeing your screen.
Excellent. Okay. So we covered two ideas around or two concepts around context analysis. So remember, there are three C's: company, competitor, and customer, but that I added a fourth that was context. And so context is really about all of the things like outside of the company. So I'll actually start with pestle analysis on the right. All the things that are sort of outside of the company's control that could impact the company, right? So this would be political factors, economic factors, social factors, technological factors, legal factors, or environmental factors. So a political factor would be like, I don't know, I don't know, you're just using something topical right now in the news. Let's say you're a drug company and you make vaccines, and there's all this like political conversation right now, whether about vaccines. So that could have an impact on how you market, or whether you move forward with a new vaccine or whatever it is. Economic would be like if people are, if there's a recession or the economy is tough or inflation is high or whatever, that has an impact on whether people are willing to, say, go out to eat at a restaurant or whatever. So the economic factors impact. Then social factors would be like, I don't know. I don't know if there's a trend going on, or um, I don't know, people apparently there's like this big thing that young people aren't drinking as much alcohol right now as young people in the past. As a social trend which would impact sort of how people, how you would market. And technological would be obviously like, like when the iPhone was invented, that obviously changed a lot of things. And then legal would be, things like, if a new law is passed that says, kids under whatever it is, 13 aren't allowed to be on social media or whatever, that could have an impact on, what your marketing looks like. And then finally, environmental. This could be, you know, I don't know if suddenly there's like this view that, whatever that plastic bottled water, the plastic bottles are bad for the environment, it might impact your marketing. All right, so that's pestle analysis. The other context tool we talked about was Porter's five forces. Porter's five forces really looks at the market sort of it looks at the forces that are external to a company, but sort of in relationship to the company, whereas Pestle is kind of looking at kind of the world at large. Porter's five forces sort of look at the business environment. So if you, for example, so the first thing to know about Porter's five forces is it's really useful when you're trying to make a decision about whether you're going to enter a new market, for example, or whether you're going to launch a product into an existing market. um, would want to look at the first one up at the top there is rivalry of competitors. And this one is actually something that often people get confused about with a different with the one next to it in orange, which is threat of substitutes. So rivalry of competitors would be how strong is the how strong is the competition in your market? And so, for example, this would be like Coke versus Pepsi would be a rivalry of competitors. They basically are producing the same product, cola, and though they are those are rivals, as opposed to a threat of substitutes, which is might be like instead of drinking Coke, I could drink bottled water, or I could drink tea, or I could drink tap water, or whatever. Like there's a lot of things that I could use as a substitute for Coca-Cola, whereas Pepsi is a rival of Coca-Cola. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. The other five forces elements would be um, the light blue one there is the potential of new market entrants. So how easy is it for a new competitor to enter the market? So let's say, you're, I don't know, Coca-Cola again, and you're looking at how hard is it for a new cola to come into the market? Well, it's pretty hard because Coca-Cola and Pepsi are so prevalent. They have a huge marketing budgets. They have a lot of influence over, the people that distribute the products and so forth. It's very hard for a new entrant to come into the market. Whereas, let's see, what's an easy one? I don't know. I guess, opening I don't know if this is a fair one, but like opening a new cafe in a small town or whatever is not very hard. It's pretty easy to do that, or opening a new restaurant or something. It's a little bit different with a restaurant. Like if you were trying to open a new restaurant in, say, downtown Boston, where the real estate costs are really high, that might not be as easy. But say in a small town with lots of open storefronts and whatever, might be pretty easy. Um, and then supplier strength refers to like how strong is, for example, the suppliers of Coca-Cola would be the people who supply the sugar, the people who supply corn syrup, the people who supply, the carbonation, whatever it is. Um, I would say in that particular case, those suppliers tend to be fairly weak because they are selling things that are commodities like sugar or corn syrup. In the case of US Coca-Cola is like corn syrup is corn syrup is corn syrup. And so any company that's producing corn syrup can be replaced. And so that means that Coca-Cola has a lot of strength relative to its suppliers because if one corn syrup maker goes to Coca-Cola and raises its price, Coca-Cola can just go to another corn syrup, producer and say, I'm going to go with you because those guys are trying to increase their prices on me. Whereas often when suppliers are really strong is when what they're supplying is hard to get. So like for example, um, the people who are responsible for mining and producing rare metals that are used in an iPhone might have a lot of power as a supplier because they are the only one that like is the only place you can get some of these unusual metals and rare substances and so forth. So that's what's meant by supplier strength. And then customer strength refers to how strong is the customer relative to, a company that's in the specific industry. And so, for example, Coca-Cola tends to be strong relative to its customers. And remember, its customers are not necessarily, in this case, referring to its consumers, but more like Walmart, Target, Stop and Shop, and so forth are Coca-Cola's customers. And they have a lot of, and so Coca-Cola has a lot of strength because it is such an in-demand brand. But like when I used to work at the Hershey company, there were some customers that were actually quite strong, like Walmart. Like Walmart could make a decision about, whether or not they were going to give bigger displays to Hershey or to Mars, and that could have a pretty big impact on sales. And so the result of that was that we tended to do whatever Walmart asked us to do, because they have a lot of their strength, there was a lot of customer strength. So you would tend to use this Porter's five forces if you were trying to analyze an industry, analyze a new geographic market, or analyze whether or not it's a good idea to maybe launch a product in a new category. So like if you were, I don't know, this is a stupid example, but if you were Oreo and you were looking at, do I want to go and create a cookie brand of Oreos? I'm sorry, sorry, what did I say? If you're Oreos and you wanted to create like a soda brand of Oreos, which I know they did this with Coke. It was gross, but um, but if you're Oreo and you want to create like a soda, you would want to do this kind of analysis to understand how hard is it to break into that um, break into that new category, right? So if you're looking at an industry, a category, or a new geographic market, this tends to be a really good way of looking at it, to make sure you've thought of everything. Make sense? What else do you have questions about specifically?
I think that's all I had questions about.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to kind of just click through the rest of the major topics. So
Okay.
you're welcome to stay on or jump off and watch it on the video. It's up to you, but I will not be insulted if you.
Okay. No, I'll stay for a little bit.
Okay. So, all right. So, what are the main topics that will be covered in the exam? The first one is the marketing framework. And this really was this idea that marketing really has a number of steps to it. It's not just the advertising, it is a whole set of activities. Um, sort of, I'll say like marketing with a big M is a very broad sort of view, strategic view of business. So I'm going to start up here with problem definition. So if you're a business, what's the problem that you are trying to solve is the first question. Um, so what industry is it in? What kind of product is it? Whatever it is. And then you would do a four C's analysis. And four C's would be really context, which we just talked about, company, competitors, and then the customers actually will really sort of hit in the next wedge here. But the whole idea of four C's analysis is to really understand your market and all the forces that are playing in that market so that if you make a decision to, sell a product in that market, you've really thought through like, who has the power, like in the Porter's five forces, or, um, what does the competitive environment look like? Or, what are my company's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? I'm just really trying to get a sense of kind of the lay of the land and where I can best play. And then you sort of start to set your strategy. And so your strategy in the marketing case, we tend to talk about this idea of STP, or segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So now that I've done all that sort of strategic analysis in the problem definition and the analytical phase, now what I'm trying to do is figuring out how can I look at the market in terms of all the possible buyers. We'll talk about segmentation in a little bit, but how do I break those buyers into groups? That's called segmentation. How do I target specific groups? That's called targeting. And then positioning is what is my sort of messaging or the way I'm going to deliver my product that solves the problem of that target. So that's the strategy. Now we start sort of moving sort of halfway between strategy and execution is the four P's. And we can talk about this idea of defining the value proposition. And the four P's refer to the product itself, which delivers value, the promotion of that product, which is how you message, how you talk about it, how do you talk about the problems that it solves, the price of the product, and the places where it is available and sold. So that's the four P's. Um, and it's really the execution is really about now that I've defined that value proposition, those four P's, now I'm going to execute and actually deliver and create that product, promote create the advertisements and so forth for the promotion, set the price for, how I'm going to sell the product, and determine where I'm going to sell the product, and then actually do all those things is the execution. Once I execute on all of those things, now I'm going to go into measurement and control. So this is where I start looking at like, is my advertising working? Or do people like my product? Or are there issues? And starting to sort of the control part is, and also, by the way, am I selling at the level that I meant to sell at? Is my product profitable in the way it's supposed to be and all those kinds of things? And the control part is sort of saying, okay, how do I adjust my plans and my approach for those based on those measurements? The learning and assessment pieces. So after I've done all that measurement and control and I've done it for a certain amount of time, I'm going to probably take a step back and do some just kind of analysis of how well did this work. And so that's really what learning and assessment is about. And then based on that learning and assessment, I often come up with new marketing problems that now need to be solved. Like maybe I need to rethink my targeting, or maybe I need to redesign one of my four P's or whatever. And that feeds back into problem definition and then back through the cycle again. So that's why it's depicted as a cycle, is because when you do things, when you execute, when you come up with a strategy, execute the strategy, you often discover that some things are working better than you expected, some things are working worse than you expected, and until you do those things, more or less. All right, so that's the marketing framework. I put in two slides for every lesson, so I'm not so I'll just, sort of this slide you can read, but this idea that good marketing is a result of a disciplined process. That process includes analyzing the market, identifying an opportunity, developing a targeted value proposition, executing with excellence, measuring and learning from actual performance. And then the other piece is that marketing is dynamic and must constantly adjust to the market conditions. So that point about this being cyclical and learn, as we learn, we add new problems, or we identify new problems and solve them. We talked about the four C's a little bit when I was talking about Porter's five forces, but there are, again, sort of the four C's broadly are just recognizing that there are external factors outside of the company and internal factors. And so we need to really consider all of them. And so we talked about this idea of there being three C's: competition, customers, and company. Um, but the fourth C that I always add is context. So the context we talked about, is macro environment, geographic, demographic, political, economic, cultural, social, technological. There's business model context as well. So this is the company B2B or B2C or B2B2C and B2B2C. So B2B would be like, uh, FedEx delivers packages for a company, right? B2C might be let's see, Amazon sells, goods to directly to you or me as a consumer. B2B2C would be something like, um, I order from DoorDash delivery from another restaurant. Um, there's also this issue of, is it a service or a product? So a service being something like delivery and a product being, sort of obviously a physical product like food. Is it an e-commerce or a bricks and mortar or some kind of hybrid? So that's the industry and business model context. And then the supply chain, which we talked about um, in Porter's Five Forces, vendors, suppliers, distribution channels, transportation, logistics, all of that kind of stuff. So the four C's really look at context, competition, customers, and company. And we talk, and I'll go through each of the tools that we use for those. So um, the notes that I had here were that marketing takes place within a broader marketing context. The market context is determined by the macro environment, business model, and supply chain, and that company capabilities, competitive intensity, and customer expectations can significantly impact how you go about your marketing strategy. All right, so next up is the slide that we already covered. I guess I could have covered these points that to understand the opportunity of a market, you need to consider the power dynamics in that market. Pestle and Porter's Five Forces offer a framework for analyzing these dynamics. These are excellent tools, as I mentioned before, for understanding a new opportunity in an existing market or a geographic expansion of existing products. Without analyzing the context, companies can make significant blunders, even with products that have been successful in other markets. So I'll use an example like Target tried to move into Canada and they just didn't understand the competitive environment and the supplier environment, whatever, and it just didn't work very well. Whereas Target obviously works very well in the US. I don't know if I actually don't know whether they're still in Canada or not. They may have figured it out, but years ago, I know they were struggling with that model because it just didn't seem to work for that market. Competitive analysis, or sorry, company analysis, the tool we used was SWOT, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The way to think about this is that strengths and weaknesses refer to internal attributes or capabilities of a company. So a low prices might be a strength, also might be a weakness, but manufacturing capability, uh, flexibility in in design, strong brand could be a strength. A weakness might be low profitability. Just notice that all of these things that I'm talking about are internal to the company. Opportunities and threats are really external. And so a threat to a company could be something like a recession or a legal change in the regulatory environment. That could be a threat. An opportunity might be I don't know, some new social trend, or it could also be, some new law that, I don't know. I guess one example of this is, suddenly there's an opportunity in the market because laws around cannabis changed a couple years ago, right? And so that created an opportunity. Um, so the one thing that I see where people tend to make mistakes on this structure is that opportunities should be written and defined if you're trying to describe an opportunity from an external perspective. So, in other words, a trend, um, I don't know, around wearing, I don't know, or eating organic food is an opportunity. But you wouldn't say that creating organic cookies is an opportunity because that is a reference to the company itself. So an opportunity is really agnostic to the company. I realize that's sort of a little bit of a nuance, but if you're right, if I, I can't remember if I ask you about opportunities on the exam, but for example, if I asked you about an opportunity, you should talk about that opportunity in terms of the external opportunity without reference to the company. So that's probably the biggest thing that I see. The other thing that's interesting is that something can be both an opportunity and a threat. So obviously the pandemic was a huge threat to many, many companies, but it was an opportunity for some other companies, like for example, DoorDash. It was an opportunity. But some companies also, for whom it what could have been a threat, actually were able to turn it into an opportunity. So just understand that the same thing could end up in both boxes. Similarly, by the way, for strengths and weaknesses, right? I mentioned before, like low price could be a strength because if you have a low price, you're cheap. A lot of people can afford it, right? So affordability is a strength, but having a really low price could also be a weakness if it means that your margins aren't good. So the notes here were to build a company's marketing strategy, you must understand internal weaknesses and strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats. Because the market context is always changing, all companies must continuously reassess their SWOT. So if you're not always looking at this, you may miss a threat that will hurt your business. An example of this that we've talked about in class is the ability to essentially download movies into onto your computer at home um, was an opportunity for Blockbuster, but they didn't go after it. And it was also a threat for Blockbuster because another company came along and took advantage of that opportunity and they didn't. And so it became a threat to them that they didn't look at it. They don't, and I don't know what they did, but they obviously didn't really analyze their SWOT in a way that turned out to be, accurate. If you neglect this constant reassessment process, you will create flawed strategies that lead to declines, failure, or even cause the business to go out of business, which is what happened ultimately to Blockbuster. The competitive analysis tool that we talked about, there are many ways to do competitive analysis. This one's just a nice simple one, but it's called the BCG matrix or the Boston Consulting Group matrix. And essentially this matrix has two dimensions. There's market growth and relative market share. So the four groups are stars are high growth, high share. I think we used as an example of this TikTok in the social media world. Although a couple months ago, TikTok was sort of in danger of being regulated out of existence. So um, they are, but they continue to be strong, growing a star. A question mark might be something like Blue Sky. A lot of people have left Twitter and moved over to Blue Sky, but it's still unclear if it's ever going to get really that big and whether it works and whether really anybody is going to sort of really build on that platform. So there's a lot of social media platforms out there that come up and sort of either win or lose in the market, and those are question marks, meaning that they have small share, usually high growth, but the question is, can they sustain that growth? A cash cow is low growth but high market share. So Coca-Cola, as an example, is a cash cow because it's not really growing the way it was long ago, but it is still huge. It has an enormous share of colas, of sodas, etc. And then the last one is dogs. Dogs would be um, businesses, brands, products that are both low growth and either low share, or often what's happening is they may still have large share, but they are losing share. So at some point, um, Blockbuster became a dog. as an example, right? You could argue that right now Twitter in the social media world is a dog because even though it still probably has pretty decent market share, it's losing share and it is not growing. And so it's really in danger of, getting smaller and smaller. Um, so that's um, how to think about dogs. The interesting thing about this matrix is that companies over their lifespan often move between these. So, for example, at some point, Blockbuster Video was probably started as a question mark because nobody knew if this whole new idea of video cassette recorders was going to take off. And then eventually it just started to take off and it became a star and it was growing and huge growth, huge share, etc. And then at some point the growth sort of stalled, settled down and whatever, and it became a cash cow. They didn't have more markets to grow into. They had stores all over the country, etc. And then at some point, um, when it was a cash cow, along came Netflix. And it remained a cash cow for a while, but at some point, Netflix kind of took off and it started to lose share, decline, and became ultimately a dog. And so, what companies often have to do is if they have become a cash cow, is they need to innovate and create within their portfolio new items that are potential stars and growing. And if they don't do that, they are in real danger of becoming irrelevant. So companies move between these, and really good companies, have portfolios with products in all the different boxes. So one of the things we talked about in class was that you can use the BCG matrix for competitive analysis, which is why I chose it for this topic. But you can also look at your portfolio of products and look at it from the perspective of which items in your portfolio are stars, which are question marks, which are dogs, and which are cash cows. And if you have a nice balanced portfolio, it ensures that you are going to be successful and win over the long run. So actually, on that note, this I use this example of these four products as when I was working on this portfolio at the Hershey Company. That Twizzlers at the time was a star because it was being invested in and it was growing. Jolly Rancher was kind of a cash cow. Good and Plenty was a dog, declining or at least very flat, very small. And then we had just launched this new brand called Lancaster Caramels, which was a question mark, which ended up going from question mark and never made it to star or cash cow and just ended up becoming a dog and going away. So understanding the market share and growth of competitors as well as of internal product lines helps companies to understand the competitive landscape. The BCG matrix is a simple framework for categorizing competitive players in a matrix or for analyzing an internal portfolio, so you can use it for either. It's important to ensure a balanced portfolio approach, eliminate the dogs, maintain cash cows, invest in stars, and cultivate multiple question marks in order to really be successful in the market. All right, so I'm going to move on to STP analysis. So a reminder that STP stands for segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So we talked about segmentation versus targeting, and I'll talk about positioning in the next couple of slides. But segmentation is the process of breaking the market up into meaningful groups. So in other words, I can segment by age. A segmentation by age might be small children, teenagers, young adults, adults, and what they sometimes call mature adults when you refer to, people sort of in their 60s and 70s and so forth. That's a segmentation. Targeting refers to selecting a group and determining which group you're going to focus on. So this is something that I've seen in a lot of exams and so forth in the past, is that people confuse segmentation and targeting. So when if you say my segmentation is 18-year-old college age um, uh, women with plans to go into, sort of high-powered professional careers. That could be a target that is not a segmentation, right? The segmentation would be maybe, by gender, um, which would be like male, female, non-binary, right? Or it might be by age, like we said before, or it might be college, education, college educated, not college education. It could be by sort of, what kind of um, what their thinking is around what their job, what kind of job they want to, what kind of career they want to have. So that would be, people who are looking for, you know, um, sort of professional business type careers versus people who are looking for more hands-on, type careers or whatever it is. Those are all segmentations. Targeting is when you pick, oh, we're going to go to 18 to 24-year-old women, etc. That's targeting. On the right of this slide, you can see two sort of views. One is the B2C or business to consumer segmentation, and it's giving you a whole bunch of different ways that you can segment. So I'll start up in this blue circle here, demographics. This would be things like age, um, uh, ethnic group, um, um, sort of more like sort of things that are kind of defining characteristics. Gender would go in here, etc. Geographic segmentation um, can refer to like, south, northeast, west. It could refer to countries, Europe, Asia, Africa, Americas, or it could even refer to sort of more local geographic segmentation, like urban versus suburban versus rural. Psychographic segmentation tends to be more about how people think, right? Cares about the healthiness of health and fitness versus doesn't care about that, right? Or is what's another example? I think, probably religious is religious versus not religious, or those kinds of things. So more about their attitudes. Conservative versus liberal would fall in here. That would be psychographic. Behavioral segmentation, the next one, is very much related to that. So this is like whereas religious versus non-religious is psychographic, attends church versus doesn't attend church, would be or attend services versus doesn't attend services would be a behavioral segmentation, or buys organic versus doesn't buy organic foods is um, a behavior, is a behavior as opposed to a attitude or way of thinking. Socioeconomic, I would say sometimes I think people probably include socioeconomic in demographic, but socioeconomic would be, our lower class, middle class, upper class, those kinds of things. Benefits. So the next couple are really more about how people use products, right? So a benefit segmentation would be built off of like what is somebody looking for from a product, right? So what's a good example of this? Uh, Somebody who cares about high performance cars versus, just more economic or utilitarian cars. That would be a benefit-based segmentation. Um, Customer lifecycle stage would be something like, you've never used the product before, you've used it once or twice, you use it all the time, or you've used to use it and you've stopped using it, right? So you can see how that might play into something like, products that are for babies, right? Is diapers, right? Like you move fairly quickly through that life cycle of newborn, or first child, newborn, all the way through, potty training, and then moving out of that, because you're in a different, like the customer is in a different life cycle stage in essence. Usage patterns would be like how frequently you use something. So are you a heavy, medium, or light user of a product? So, if you buy, 1 jar of pickles a year, you are probably a light user. Whereas if you buy a new jar of pickles every week, I don't know why I chose pickles, but if you use a new jar of pickles every week, then you'd be a heavy user. And then purchase intent is an important segmentation when you're sort of trying to move people along the sales process is if I am just browsing, I'm just considering whether I want to buy a car, I would want to market to you maybe differently than if I know exactly what car I want to buy. Um, or I know I'm going to buy a car and I'm just trying to pick between two cars or whatever it is, that's what's meant by purchase intent. How far along are you? Are you likely to purchase? Or you may be like, I'm not even interested in shopping for cars right now. So you would want to be able to segment consumers around all of those things. Business to business segmentation down the bottom is just an example, similar example. So this would be the needs of the company um, that you are targeting to sell your products to? Like, do they want low price? Do they want service support? Do they want technical support? Do they want customized solutions? Do they want fast lead times? Do they want quality? So you can segment on, and again, remember segmentation as opposed to targeting. If you're segmenting on needs, you might look at price sensitivity. So you would have a group that is low price. They want low price. That's the most important thing. To price is important, but is not the only important factor. To price doesn't matter. What more important to me is that I get the perfect quality, right? Firmographics might be like the size of company, region that it functions in, the type of company or industry that's in, the language that they use, the number of sites that the company has, or the number of employees. So if you might be interested if you are a payroll services company, you might be interested in the number of employees a company has. And you might say, we serve companies that are, in your targeting, you might look at, do they have less than 20 employees, 20 to 50 employees, 50 to 150, whatever, and upwards, whatever. That would be your segmentation by size. And then your targeting would be we target companies with less than 50 employees, for example. And then finally, behaviors, purchasing patterns, types of products purchased, brand loyalty, attitudes towards innovation. So if a company is like, we don't really innovate, we don't change things very much or whatever, you might not want to market to them, new technologies or whatever because they don't need them. They aren't using them. They're sort of sticking with the old way they did that. So your segmentation would be uh, is highly innovative, moderately innovative, minimally innovative, or something like that. That would be your segmentation. Your targeting exercise might be like, we want to focus on highly innovative companies, and we're going to go to them with some kind of new software solution or AI tools or whatever it is. But going to like a company like where I worked, Cracker Barrel, with hey, let's do stuff with AI doesn't go work as well because they're just not a super innovative company or industry. All right. So, um, quickly here, companies categorize their customers and consumers into segments according to a variety of criteria, demographics, psychographics for consumers, or firmographics for businesses. A target segment is selected based on size, attractiveness, intensity of competition. Ideally, the company finds a segment that has an unmet need, want, or pain point, which leads us into the next section. So we talked about this idea of pain points as being the source of positioning. And we talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is sort of based on human needs and wants. At the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, you've got physiological needs like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. Safety needs is the next level, personal security, employment, resources, health, property. Like, do I feel stable in my life as opposed to, am I going to eat my next meal? Is obviously, if that's my problem, I'm not as worried about feeling safe. But the next level up is safety. And then the next level after that is love and belonging. So friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. The next one beyond that is esteem. Do I get respect? Do I have status, self-esteem, recognition, strength, and freedom? And then finally at the top, self-actualization. This is really about the desire to be the most that I can be. And you can really use this set of ideas to sort of really think about how do I want to talk about my company? How do I want to position my company? So I think I gave the example of Disney being about love and belonging. It's about creating this connection with family, bringing your family together and making your children feel loved, right? Whereas Nike is probably more about self-actualization. How do I become the best athlete that I can be? On the business side, very similarly, again, I mentioned this in class that the diagram on the right is not necessarily a thing like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's just a diagram that I found on the internet, but it's a very similar idea, right? Companies need sales. They need to be able to create cash. They need profit, meaning they need stability. Am I making money or losing money? It determines whether I can stay in business. They need order. How do I create efficiency? How to become more productive? How do I make whatever I make or deliver whatever service I deliver in a way that isn't going to lead me to go out of business or lose, or sort of be unprofitable. Impact, the creation of transformation. Like, am I actually doing something of value in the world? And the last person is like last rung of this pyramid is the legacy, which is the creation of permanence, right? Like, you know, am I creating a brand that is really going to last for a long time and continue to deliver, something valuable to the world? So, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Positionings tend to kind of borrow from these ideas, and you sort of say, what is the thing that I'm trying to solve for the consumer, and how do I create a positioning for my messaging, my product, my price, my promotion, my place? Everything about the product needs to be designed to create this sense of making it easy to, sort of say, provide love and belonging to to my customers. So the brand pyramid, which we talked about, is really based, in some ways it's kind of based out of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not exactly like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it starts from this idea that if you kind of look at the world from the perspective of a product or a service or an offering, what is the core functionality? What are the basic features of this product? What are the materials or ingredients that are used? What are the buttons that are on your iPhone, whatever, just actual things that are true about the product. So the products, services, and the features of those products that are offered by the brand is the very, very base level of the pyramid. Rational benefits refer to, like, sort of those bottom couple of rungs of Maslow's hierarchy, but this is like tangible benefits, like what is it that the product does, right? A lawnmower, for example, cuts grass. Um, that's not the same as, like, the core functionality of it has a blade, it cuts, things, whatever. But the rational benefit is, I guess, actually, I'll say that differently. The rational benefit is it mows the lawn, right? It makes my lawn look, decent, right? That's the rational benefit. The core functionality is that it cuts the grass. I think I sort of said that wrong before. An emotional benefit of a lawnmower, just as an example, would be that it makes me feel like I am, that it makes me feel like I am sort of um, uh, taking care of family, my household. It gives me status if my lawn looks nice, obviously it gives me status with my neighbors. Those are really emotional benefits. The personality of a brand is adjectives and phrases that personify the brand. So Disney, you might say, you might think about the word magical or fun or something like that. That's the personality. The essence of the brand is really about sort of its mission, its vision, and its core values. And so the essence of a brand is really that highest level of what's the purpose of this brand, right? Disney might say to bring families together or something like that is a is an essence. Notice that when I talk about that, I'm not really saying anything about how they do it. So typically an essence, at least at its highest level, is really in my mind tied to, if you look over on the right there, the idea of a vision statement. What is the purpose of the brand in the world? The purpose of the brand Disney is to bring families together. The mission is we do this by delivering, sort of magical moments through, theme parks and so forth. That's a mission. That's how we deliver on that purpose. And the core values are sort of the non-negotiables that you have about your brand. Disney might say we are fair, we are welcoming to every family, whatever it is. That's kind of like what's meant by core values. That's at the essence level of the pyramid. And then the personality, what sort of brand are we? And we already talked about the other ones. So on this page here, just a couple of bullets. Marketing and brand strategy focuses on defining what the brand is and is not, and how that translates into marketing execution. A strong position focuses on the problems and pain points the brand solves. So if your brand, is um, solving a specific pain point, which is I just, some people just want no frills, um, cheap groceries that they know are good quality. They might go to Market Basket, right? Whereas Wegmans might be solving more of a problem around I want to have um, a shopping experience that is sort of exciting and adventurous and whatever, and so their whole business is built around, I think I mentioned before, this idea of like sort of produce theater, or Whole Foods, which is I want to know that the products I'm buying are healthy for me and for the environment. So their positioning is focused on solving this pain point. Um, and then the last section here was that we just went over in class the other day was about the customer journey and the four Ps. And so the customer journey really follows need identification is the first part. Like, does the person know that they need a product? Do they understand they even have the problem that your product might solve? If once they know that they have that problem, now are they aware of your brand, or what brands are they aware of, or what products are they aware of that solve that problem? And then consideration is which ones are they going to consider? So just because I'm aware of a brand doesn't mean that I'm going to consider it, right? Like if I think I mentioned this in class, if I think of Cracker Barrel as a breakfast restaurant and I'm trying to think of where do I want to go for dinner, I may be aware of Cracker Barrel, but I'm not going to consider it because I don't think of it as a dinner restaurant, right? That's what's meant by consideration versus awareness. Purchase conversion is when I finally make the decision that I'm going to buy and I exchange money in whatever form for the service or good that I'm buying. Experience value assessment refers to the actual usage of the product, the actual experience of having purchased the product. Now I'm going to eat the dinner that I got at a restaurant, or I'm going to read the book that I bought on Amazon, or I'm going to, whatever. I'm going to order from DoorDash and get that product delivered to me. What was my experience of that product or service? And then what's my value assessment of that? Like, did it deliver on what I was expecting, or did it exceed my expectations or did it miss my expectations? And then experience and the value assessment really lead into the last circle there, which is retention and advocacy. So, what you're really trying to do is create a process where people go from need identification, awareness of your brand. They choose your brand over all the other things that they considered. They have an amazing experience so that when they have that experience, or when they have that problem again, they are retained, meaning they buy your product again. And ideally, even better is that when they notice that somebody else is looking for a product that's similar or has a similar problem or is asking about how they solve the problem, they advocate. They actually say, you should, buy this product because I used it and it was great. So understanding that full consumer journey is really the key to executing and marketing. And the execution elements, the value proposition, as I called it on an earlier slide, is depicted down the bottom there by the four P's. And I sort of put it underneath this because there's a connection between the four P's and these parts of the customer journey. So promotion tends to be most connected with need identification and awareness. So this is where I'm advertising a product and delivering some message about it that hopefully helps people see that they have a need and also helps them consider your product. Promotion can fall a little bit into into purchase conversion if the promotion is talking about prices as well. But really, price is probably most important for purchase conversion. So people are looking at price really in two stages in the consideration when they're trying to decide, how important is the cost of something to me. And so they're looking at, like, think about if you're looking for something on the internet, you're always looking at the prices and whatever, and that determines what am I willing to consider. But it also obviously plays into the purchase conversion because you actually have to pay the money for that product. Place, I would say, actually kind of falls across a little bit of in awareness and consideration. Like, I obviously am not going to consider a product. Like, I'm not going to consider a restaurant in LA if I'm in Boston, right? So where something is placed has an impact on consideration. Or if I don't feel like going to the store, I might only be considering things that are online, right? Purchase conversion obviously takes place in whatever location you decide you're going to purchase in. So, is it an online purchase or do you buy it in a store? So, place obviously plays into purchase conversion. I would say to some extent, place sometimes plays into the experience and value assessment part as well. For example, in a restaurant, obviously the place itself, the location, how it feels, how comfortable it is, how the product is delivered is very much tied to that experience as well. But place really mainly refers to how the product is distributed and how easy it is to get that product. And then finally, the product itself is really most aligned to the experience and value assessment. So how did that product um, deliver on what your expectations were? It also sometimes plays a little bit into purchase conversion and so forth, in the sense that, like, if you're in a supermarket, part of the product we'll see is like the packaging and the graphics on the packaging is part of that product. And so sometimes it is there to try and drive things like consideration and purchase conversion, et cetera. So you can see that it kind of each of these kind of plays in multiple parts of the journey, but it kind of moves across the journey. And then the last piece, retention and advocacy, obviously is just sort of all of those things, the promotion, the price, the place, and the product. How did that play into your overall experience of this brand? And if you had a great experience, it will drive retention and advocacy. So down the bottom there, it says the ultimate goal of marketing is really to align the four Ps to every step of the customer journey in a way that meaningfully and effectively solves the customer and consumer pain point. And then the last set of bullets here that I'll go through, I'm about to run out of time here, is marketing strategy focuses on solving a problem or a pain point. Marketing execution is focused on the product itself, its price, how it's promoted to customers, and the channels and places it is sold. And the ultimate goal of marketing is to align the four Ps to every step of the customer journey in a way that supports the marketing strategy. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Hifsa, thanks for hanging in with me.
First, thank you, Professor.
No worries. And I will be downloading this video and I will put it up in the in Canvas. But there is my review. So I will see you on
It was a good review. I
awesome.
feel like there were things that I was like, oh, I remember like doing this in class, but I didn't remember it in detail. So I
Right.
feel like now it like kind of came back to me.
Awesome. Good. Well, hopefully other people will take a look at it, but at least you got a good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
It
Have
was
a
really
great
good.
night.
All right.
I'll see you on
You
Monday.
too. Bye bye.
Bye.